Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sports Corner with the Con Man on the Sports Empire Network. I am joined this evening by my co-host, Mr. Mike Samuel. Michael, how you doing this evening? Here we go.
Okay. Sorry about
How
that.
we doing, my brother?
I'm doing well. How are you tonight?
I'm doing rather well. We're waiting on our guest, Mr. Gene Smith, former captain of the Georgetown Hoyas, and he'll be coming on shortly. But up until that time, I wanted to talk with you about your experience last night on the network, working side by side with Cool McCain and whoever else you guys had on, discussing the draft. How did that go?
So it was quite an experience for me. That's the longest I've been on a podcast. My throat is showing it today. So it was fun. A lot of good conversations, people in and out all night. And Cool's just a really good guy. He's really supportive, pulls people in. So it was really great just hearing different perspectives from different people about the draft and what they expected and where it was going and what you could see taking place right in front of you. So it was a very, very long night, but it was. I think it was well worth it.
Unfortunately, as you all know, I'm a referee, and I had a referee last night. Otherwise, I would have loved to have been on the show. But I know you was in good hands with my man Cool, so I know it went well. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it tonight too, as well on the Top of the Key podcast as well.
Yes.
So you're gonna have a busy 2 days.
I sent a text to Cool early that I was in full recovery mode today because that was I said the same thing to you. It's over 3 hours. That's a long time.
That is long. I've never done that long myself. But what I want to get into before our guest comes on is, Mike, maybe you may or may not know this. About maybe a couple years ago, I just became fascinated or enthralled about the Big East, the way it used to be played, because I've been watching basketball for so long, and I wanted to get a perspective from players who played in the Big East. And that's when I started contacting players from the Big East. And my very first Big East guest was Tony Bruin, who was from Syracuse.
Yep.
And he enlightened me a whole lot of the Big East ways, and and the way the game was played, the crowd, the intensity of the game, and the way the rules were a little bit back different then. And what I did was I kind of pursued it a little bit more, and then I started contacting a lot of people from the Big East. And that's what got me, to be honest with you, being able to get Gene Smith on my show. He was on before, but again, due to technical difficulties, not with this network, but something happened, transpired. So we really didn't get the full view of what we really wanted to achieve. And when I asked him to come back on again, he quickly said yes. I'm going to wait and let the people know exactly what he's done and what he's doing now, which is pretty incredible. I'm gonna hold off on that, but that's what gave me the idea to go and contact a lot of the Big East, because I'm old school and you're old school, and I think that was the best. The Big East was the best of the best, and it's been an honor to try to be able to get in contact with these people, and they've been very cordial, and they so far a lot of them want to come on, and we have a few coming on. As you know, we got Donnie Brown from Providence College coming on in a couple of weeks. So, we're doing, Earl Kelly's coming on from UConn. So we're trying to get some things together here. So,
the Big East competition, I think the true testament was you could feel it when you were watching it on television. You didn't need to be there, right?
Exactly.
You could just feel it. You could feel how hard those guys played, and they were playing for something they hadn't played for before. So whatever the ECAC leagues that existed way back when didn't have that level of intensity, even though you're still playing against schools that are in your backyard, right? So there was those inherent, rivalries that existed. But when it became when it started to get on television through ESPN, I think that's when it really changed, because you really got to showcase your school and your talent, because before you were on local television, right? You were not on a national television platform at all. And I think that's what really changed the league, and that helped them recruit, get some really great players to go in there. And so, and you and I are carrying on those conversations right now. And that's how important it was. And that's how they made it feel. They made it feel like it was very important.
And also, Mike, the thing is, they had a special on maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, and how the Big East got started. Mm-hmm. I'm going back with Dave Gavitt and how their interpretation of how the league was supposed to be. And then all the changes that have since taken place with the Big East going to the ACC, mm-hmm. and all because football was generated the most money for the different programs. And back then, though, when the Big East was a Big East, you established rivalries. And now you got teams going from the Big East to the ACC and wherever. I think it put a definite burden on the league. And I guarantee you, Dave Gavitt would not be a happy camper right now if he was still alive to see this exist.
It is too bad, because that was a unique thing for I was in school at that time, you're in school at that time, and watching that type of competition, it was very cool to see. And yes, it's very sad and it's very disappointing that those schools have made those financial decisions. But I understand it. I'm not happy with it, because it's a big takeaway nationally and locally for those schools and for us as fans now watching all of this. So that's very disappointing, because I do miss that. You see it every now and again, maybe in the ACC with a Duke or North Carolina and those rivalries, maybe in the Ivy League. But, those schools, the Georgetowns, the Providence College, and Syracuse, you couldn't miss those games. You were setting up your whole night just to make sure you would see it, because you knew you were going to have conversations with your friends the next day about that. And that was going to be a running conversation about those games, those tournaments in the Madison Square Garden. How cool was that? That goes back to, that goes back way back, Michael, to the NIT, when the NIT was something before the NCAA, and they played all those games in the Garden. So that had a lot of historical perspective for college basketball and amateur athletics, to be honest, that is missing now.
And that's very true. And I got my first experience. I was still in college at the time, and of course I was playing Division III at the time. But one of our good friends, Michael Grant, was playing football at BC, mm-hmm. and he had invited me to go watch BC versus Syracuse. I think you might know who played on Syracuse at that time. Mm-hmm. Pearl Washington. Anyway, so, I was there, front row, matter of fact. Front row watching. The place was unbelievable. The place was packed. I mean, again, you could tell the animosity between both teams. The rivalry was there. The crowd was nuts. They all wanted to see Pearl Washington, and he put on a phenomenal show. And then what was funny about it, what was really funny, I hope people can understand this. As I told you, Mike Grant at that time was rooming with Michael Adams.
Okay. Oh,
so
wow.
After the game, we go back to the dorm, hang out with Michael Adams while they're sitting there watching the news of the highlights of the game.
Yeah.
Now, to me, that's a different experience that I've never experienced before in my life. And then that's when, I got to, really meet these guys as, they're just normal players, just that they were in a bigger exposure. They're in a bigger atmosphere, but they're just, matter of fact, they're just college kids having a good time.
Yeah.
Just that they had national TV. They had all these other things that, of course, we didn't have at that time. But it was a great experience. And you got to see things that I never knew. Like Michael Adams could have been a pro boxer. I didn't know that. But these are things that we talked about during the course of the evening. And it was a great time. And for me to see that firsthand. And, of course, later on, with Dave, I went to about 25 UConn games. I got to see UConn against Georgia Tech with Kenny Anderson, if you remember that.
I do.
And Dennis Scott. So I got to see a lot of games, in person. And so it just, made me, I never felt watching these games today, Mike. I just don't feel the way like I used to. I know it's resonant because I'm old as dirt, but it just don't seem like it has the same impact that it did back in the day. And that's kind of why, I'm trying to get, the Big East memories to live on. You know what I mean? And of course, with your help, we're going to do it.
It's interesting you say that about not having that same feeling. I think it falls, one of those components, Michael, and the contributors to this, I think, is the players not staying in school for 4 years.
Mm-hmm. That's a
You know,
definitely.
you don't get to know them. You don't see them develop. So you don't really kind of build that relationship with them as, you're a fan, you're an ex-player. You kind of lose that thread to them. And, you would get to watch Kenny Anderson for a period of time. You get to watch Michael Adams for a period of time. And you saw those guys. You saw where those schools had that commitment from them and they could develop their program. So you would expect them to accelerate and get better every season. And, hopefully they get some breaks and actually get some real, get into the tournament and do some damage there. But I think that's what's lost now, is that we just don't have those relationships. Granted, it's through the television or it's through the internet at this point, and it gets to be difficult to really follow because you and I were so used to locked into the television and watching those games, I'm repeating myself here a little bit about making sure we could watch them and have those conversations. So you lose that sort of that tangible relationship with teams, leagues, and players.
And again, you made the point about the one and done. Again, I keep bringing it up. Now, as you notice, well, you already know because you guys did the draft last night. How many people actually played 4 years? I forgot who was the first one chosen that actually played 4 years of college. I'm trying to remember. I think it was somebody
I'll throw a percentage on you that I actually just worked through real quick. 71% of the draft was underclassmen.
Ooh,
yeah,
that's just something right there.
If you looked at the first 4 picks of the draft, one was a foreign player, and the other 3, I think the other 3 were G League.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And again, if you notice, a lot of the top, well, I shouldn't say a lot, a small percentage, but a lot of, they're still from high school, either going to go to the G League or Overtime Elite, one or the other.
Yep.
They're still going to be compensated. And like they were saying last night, maybe school's not for everybody.
Right.
I think they should get education. I think they should go at least 1 or 2 years to experience the college life and to have your youth, because once you go pro, it's the real deal Holyfield then, you know what I mean? Then
well, one of the things that we can save this a little bit for later, but one of the things we did discuss last night is that sort of finality, that if you're going to make that decision, you better, the pressure is on to really succeed. That's really hard because you're a young guy trying to get through this and you've got that pressure now where I'm making money and the expectation changes. Then it would have, the expectation when you go into college is deep, but it's not as deep as when you're trying to make some money and you're getting paid to do this. So your commitment level changes. So there's a bit of a finality to this where you could, to your point, Michael, you could be done in 2 years and you're what, 22?
Absolutely. And also you got to think too that, with Overtime Elite, the G League, overseas, I mean, there's only so much spots you can obtain. And a lot of these players want that NBA dream, but I mean, actually, how many, from what I gathered last time, I think 1% of college players actually make it to the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put into that perspective, I mean, and then again, as we talked about in one of the other shows, it's one thing to make it.
Yeah.
It's if you can stay there. Do you know what I mean? And now what they got, with the luxury tax and the salary cap, the NBA, the top level, and a lot of teams now have the top 3 players who are on max contracts, which kind of puts a damper on the rest of the roster, because now the NBA, what they want to do is to stop having teams have those 3 max players. Right. So what they want to try to do is put a luxury tax on you, so to stop you from doing it. But some teams, like Golden State, for example, will continue to do that. And I wonder how much of an effect does it have on the kids? Because now, most kids, when we were growing up, oh, I can't wait to go play college. Now is the effect, okay, once I get out of high school, I'm going to go play in the G League. And a lot of times you don't get established or you don't develop enough to whereas you're going to go maybe against if you go to G League, you're going against a pro style offense, pro style defense. You're going against men, and you may not be physically. I mean, a lot of them, majority of them, you have those exceptions, but a majority of them will probably not be able to physically handle the hard work that it takes to make it in that league. And again, you're a young kid, you're out there on your own. I mean, it's a whole different perspective. I think. I don't know. I mean, that's just my point of view on that aspect.
Yeah, it feels like, Michael, the more you look at this and the more we talk about it, it feels like it's this rush to get there, and like the money is going to disappear. Now, you do have those issues where somebody could get injured and so on, but if you walk away from the college experience, that's a little bit difficult, right? And I think to your point earlier, as far as getting a taste of that, getting some education, start to develop physically, right? Because even though you were a dominant player in high school, even as a freshman or a sophomore in college, you're not going to be there either, right? So you're going to now go to the G League and try to develop there. I don't know. I just think there's some really odd decisions that are made. Guidance needs to be really, I think, fortified with some of these decisions. That, you might want to spend some time in school to see what it looks like, how you're going to prepare, continue to get coached, continue to be taught, where, as I said earlier, is your basketball life going to be over by 21, 22 years old because you didn't make it out of the G League, or you got hurt there, or you got into the NBA, to your point earlier again, that I can't sustain. I can make a team, I can get in, but I can't sustain my ability. It's just really, it's too hard because physically you're challenged. And, as we've talked prior, there's always those situations where someone else is coming and looking for your job now, right? So every year those teams are supplementing this. They're moving players around. So that was taking place last night, right? You had all this shifting that was taking place with organizations because a lot of these organizations want to get younger and they don't really have much choice in some of the situations. But when they're saying that, they're getting really young guys.
And something too much. I was watching the pro combine the other day. They were doing it in Chicago, as they always do, and it was funny. Is that you would think that most players would just try to be able to. Their wish would be to go right directly into the NBA. You know what? The biggest thing now is just to get a two-way. Oh. Just to get a two-way. That is like that. Just give me a two-way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then they were talking about the situation where my guy, Max Strus, who played at DePaul, and we saw them, in fact, when they played at Providence. And I could tell right away he had a pro jump shot. But then when he was with the Bulls and the minor league team, I guess, affiliate, and he was in the weight room, and they didn't even give him a second look. And then all of a sudden, Miami grabs him, and look what happens.
Right.
Undrafted, playing in the finals of the NBA.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it can go either way. It's crazy. It's nuts. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's a weird formula now. And, we're not close enough to really see what goes on with those organizations and those decisions that need to be made. But it looks very bizarre from a distance where you have all these guys that are, it feels like it, and I mentioned it earlier, it feels like it's a rush. It feels like it is a much more definite decision than it used to be. Because again, it feels like it's a finality, right? You can sort of see the finish line on some of this stuff for those players who are either about to max out physically or max out skill set in their skill sets. And that's difficult. I can't imagine what that's like to actually face that. But, they're willing to go in and hopefully make some money, enough money to kind of walk away at some point. And I hope that's the case. You don't want anything. You want everyone to do well, but it's just not there as far as a percentage. And let me just share a quick story. So, and not to bring this back to me, but when we talked about 5-star, and the first time I was there, and Hubie Brown was doing a lecture, and I mentioned this to you before. Hubie Brown talks to you like you're an adult and hit you right between the eyes when he talked about the percentage of guys who get into the NBA. And it was like this murmur went through all the students, like all the campers, like, oh. And I'm sitting there like, I know I'm not going to be a pro. I want to be a good college player. I think I can do that. But it was funny when you heard that noise going through all the campers. Like, I'm looking around, like some of these guys are going to be pro because some of them were. Like Sidney Green was there and Tony was there. So, it was funny how some of them, like, and I looked around like, these are guys like my size. It's like, there's no way you're going to be a pro. It's just not going to happen. But when he gave that message, it was like, wow, that's startling, and it's right between the eyes, and you're going to deal with that. So, that's sort of been known, where it's been, to your point earlier about those exceptions physically, those exceptions that are athletically, and skill set wise, those are the guys that get into the league and make a contribution, and are there that actually kind of the foundations of the league.
And here is where I think a lot of people probably going to disagree with me. I think by going to that 1 year of at least 1 year of college, you get taught, believe it or not, the fundamentals. Whereas if you go to the G League, they already expect you to already have them skills. And they don't have enough time, I don't think, to be able to give you enough training to develop your fundamentals. Of course, the foul shooting, the basics. But I think once you get in that college atmosphere, when you can learn a lot of stuff that you can become better, stronger, first of all. I think you can, get better physically, mentally, socially. I think all those things are positives. But again, there are those who can just go and do it, but those are very few and far between. And I'm just wondering what is going to be the next thing. We got the NIL, we got the overtime elite, which, by the way, the head of that just recently got hired by the Brooklyn Nets. You know who I'm talking about. His name's Kevin Ollie. So he just got hired by there, and he went for the Detroit Pistons job, by the way, also. But I'm thinking I think 1 year of college would definitely help a lot of these players as far as learning how to get your body right and not having the pressure of going to the G League and trying to make that money as important, whereas you're playing for the love of the game and not for the money. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think one of the things, Michael, too, is, depending on those players as far as their activity and participation in AAU, going to college might be the first time they've actually been coached.
Exactly.
And that's something that is getting, I think, there's that trend there where it's hard to coach some of these kids coming if they're going to go play for their school. And you and I have heard those stories where they're almost uncoachable. That they're not taking criticism. They're not listening to those coaches. There's a conflict because the AAU coach is hanging around their bench. So there's all this complexity that exists for a high school kid. So to me, if you're going to college, you're going to go play at Kentucky, you're going to be taught by Calipari, right? You're going to be coached by him, and you're going to get coached hard. And I think that's something that gets lost. That if you're just going from high school to the G League to the developmental league, and you really have not been coached and taught for some period of time, that's going to be that's going to be a tough challenge for you.
That's going to be a red flag.
Yeah.
And the thing you said, what I want to bring out too, and now, again, my belief, anybody can coach. Not many can teach. So to my understanding of the game is anybody can yell out, do this, do that. But when you explain, do this, do that, but here's why you need to do this and do that, and give them the reasons behind it so it makes sense. So you bring some credibility to what you're preaching. So to me, I believe a lot of these great coaches, a lot of these coaches are more, if you ask them, they'd be consider themselves teachers than coaches. That's my opinion. I might be right, I might be wrong, but that to me, that's where, if you, like when I do what I do, not that I do all that much as far as that, because I'm a referee, but when you try to emphasize the teaching aspect of it, instead, because coaches, they think by yelling and screaming, that's going to get the point across. It might be effective for some, but a lot of times it's not that effective. It goes in one ear and out the other after a while. But I think if you're better at being able to teach and explain, I think that goes a lot further than that. But waiting for my guest to come on, he better come on. But anyway, before he comes on, I want to give you guys a little bit of breakdown about Gina. As I said before, he did come on my show before, but this stuff here I just looked up. I didn't know he was doing all this. Gene Clifton Smith is a Georgetown graduate and member of the prestigious Hoya basketball fraternity. As a 4-year letterman, Smith won a national championship in 1984, twice trying out for the USA Olympic team, in addition to being drafted by the Indiana Pacers 5th round, the number 96 pick overall. Gene has also, now here's what I did not know, Gene has also built a legendary career in the sneaker industry, where he spent 20 plus years at Nike and later brand Jordan. Imagine that, I didn't know this. Fueling sales, product development, consumer insights, and brand development. He is a proud honoree of the Nike Marathon Award, and many of his innovative strategies still lead the industry today, including the boutique sneaker retail channel that feeds the billion-dollar resale economy. Mr. Smith is a legendary crusader and beacon, having served most of his career in the global leading market of New York City. Gene has fostered now impenetrable relationships with some of the nation's most influential and important retailers and leading figures in the global basketball community. The former basketball captain has consulted for numerous brands, including most recently Adidas, and currently holds the position of vice president of sales for the agency brand I Am he co-founded. Ain't that something? Pretty good, huh, Mike?
That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. He is a proud father of 3 sons, 2 former D1 athletes, and 1 in training. Again, Mike and I, Gene and I have been, kicking it back, texting each other for about a couple of weeks right now. So, again, he came on the show a while ago. We didn't really get into it as much as I spoke about him tonight. But I wanted him to, the reason why I wanted him to come on was give his experience about, playing for the legendary John Thompson. Mm-hmm. Of all that talent that they had on that team, on that 1982-83 team, Mike, check this out. This crew they had on that team. Patrick Ewing, I think you know who that is. David Wingate, Michael Jackson, Billy Martin, Anthony Jones, Horace Broadnax, that name's familiar. Of course, Gene Smith, Ralph Dalton, and I guess you could call him the infamous or the famous or Mr. Fred Brown, the most notably famous for throwing that, we'll call it something. The pass
it was an errant play.
See, now this is why I got you on the show. Yeah, his errant play. So again, like I said, I also want to talk to him about, if he comes on, I think he'll be on. I hope he will. I want to talk to him also about the fact that of, him playing for John Thompson, because I've gotten different views on actually how John Thompson, because I had Reggie Lewis on, Reggie Williams on my show. Excuse me, God bless. I had Reggie Williams on my show, and he talked about the fact that once you left Georgetown, John Thompson really didn't do anything about it. He didn't care about his former players. He specifically told me that twice, as a matter of fact, on the shows. And I wanted to get his take on that. Mm-hmm. And if you notice, if you look at it, and someone brought that to my attention, which was Reggie, he said, if you notice, when John Thompson was coaching, who took over as his coach?
Was that his son?
Thank you. That's number 1. And it seems to me, I don't know, I don't want to get too much deep because I don't really know all the facts. But I just want to know, obviously, John Thompson was a great coach and basically saved the life of Allen Iverson. So I don't want to go into no detail and talk negative about the person. But I just want to get a different indication of how it was playing. First of all, playing with all them legendary players, number 1, and him being captain. How did that go? Because when you're a captain, you got to be like sort of the best player on the team in most cases. And obviously, he wasn't the best on that team. So I think we got him coming on. I think so. Gene, is that you? I think we're going to come on. Well, once we get those difficulties straightened out, like I said, so I mean, being on with all that talent on that team had to be incredible. And also, we want to talk about the new head coach of Georgetown, which is Ed Cooley, who was a former coach at Providence College.
Right.
And I think we're trying to get him on, people. I think he's going to come on. We're trying to work it. We're trying to work it. But now, what's your recollection of those Georgetown teams, Mike?
Well, my first response to that question, Michael, is they just always played hard. They were not, they weren't going to actually run light over you. They were going to come at you. They were going to press you. They were going to run at you. And they were a very aggressive team. And that's what, and Thompson went out and recruited those type of players. And so that was always interesting watching them. And it was always watching those other teams that they played against and how they would respond, how they would react. Because they were there to intimidate you with their aggressive style, how athletic they were, what great basketball players that they were. And, you're talking about Gene playing with all those great players. That's a huge adjustment for those guys, right? To your point earlier again, right? Those guys are used to being the best player on their high school teams or tournament teams that are running around the country. Now all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of you playing on one team. And you have to find your role. And some of that's really hard to do for some of those guys because you're going to kind of have to leave your ego in the locker room and it has to be about your team. And that's, again, you're dealing with young guys, right? Young guys that have to kind of develop and become mature really, really fast and live up to those expectations of why you're in that school and why you're there. And that can be daunting for a young player and a young person.
And also, what brings back memories for me is that Georgetown team was like I guess a precursor to the Michigan Fab Five.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was kind of interesting because, like you said, they were a very intimidating team. They all had that dog in them, and then they had a coach who was like that as well. You know how he was. So I mean, it was just great watching again the Big East the way that it was, and the teams that they played against, and the game. And matter of fact, also, Mike, if you remember, there weren't too many other games on the networks. There weren't too many, if I recall. It wasn't like now you get 8,000 games, 8,000 divisions, all kind of. Back then, it was like, to me, it was the Big East, ACC, whatever else, the South, and then you had the West, and then you compared all of them together. Then you had the major NIT. Obviously, we're having a little difficulty. Hey, this time it's not my fault, Mike. It's not my fault. So I'm kind of enjoying this, to be honest with you. Now you'll need one now.
I think it might be. I think it might be key because I saw her flash in that she was on audio, and it might be her. Yeah,
my bad, y'all.
Hi.
You're fired, boss. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying.
No, you're right. Right. So I think the Big East, again, ESPN jumped in because they were a growing network at the time. So they needed games, right? I think that was part of it. And the Big East was right there. And they were local. They were on the East Coast. So they decided to establish themselves through that particular opportunity. So, yeah, I think the Big East was on a couple of nights during the week. There may have been a couple of games on the weekend. And, yeah, you were competing against the Big Ten, the ACC, occasionally, right, the SEC games, and then maybe a game from out west. So you were getting those smatterings of games, to your point. But the Big East, for us, 2 nights a week, I think it was like Tuesday, Thursday, and you might get a game on a Saturday night or a couple of games on a Saturday. And that was great to watch. Again, it was just you had to make sure you saw those games because, again, I knew that I was going to have a conversation with someone, but you're also looking at those guys and, you could see the demand on them by their team, by their coaches, right? They were brought there for a reason. They were brought there to compete in that league, and the bar kept on getting raised every single year. And that was just great to watch. And you always knew there was going to be great games. There was going to be great competition. And, you unfortunately at that time, right? Because I don't think there were many at-large teams going to the NCAA. So if you had to win you had either the regular season champion and who won the Big East tournament was going to go to the NCAAs. And there were some great teams that don't go. And so you go to the NIT, and NIT was something at that point still, but it wasn't the NCAA because they were trying to promote that a lot. But you always had one of those or two of those teams coming out of the Big East that you knew were going to get a good seed. They were going to get some great national exposure. And as I mentioned earlier, that was their recruiting tool, right? They needed that to go out and recruit so they could keep on getting better and so they could compete on that stage.
And then also, too, we had, I shouldn't say we, but yeah, I'll say we had the most charismatic coaches back in the day. We can go Lou Conaseca. We can go on and on. Boeheim. I mean, we had some Thompson. We had some characters, and they were fun to watch. Probably weren't fun to play for, but they were fun. They were entertaining, and I think that also played a part. And if you remember too, Mike, a lot of them coaches coached for the same team for many years.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the turnover like it is right now. You play 2, 3, you coach 2, 3 years, you get a losing record, you're gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just the nature of the beast now, and they're very quick to get rid of coaches so fast. Whereas back in the day,
I think some of that though goes back to, I think this is where NIL comes in a little bit, Michael, too, where also the transfer portal. Right, that the coaches that were leaving who were a little bit nomadic as far as where they were going, how long they were going to stay at a particular university, because the money kept on getting bigger, so they leave, right? And I think that's reflected back towards the transfer portal, where now, you know, if you get recruited by a guy and he's out the door in 2 years, and someone else comes in and he doesn't really interested in playing you, you're stuck there, right? Unless you're going to give up a year of eligibility back then. So then it turns into, all right, the transfer portal comes up and we now give you the option to leave. Now, there's a weird mechanism there as far as the motivation as to why some of those players are leaving. And, you know, I'm not really sure what the percentage is as far as how it works out for some of those players that leave to go to play someplace else. I'm not sure. I don't think it's great. I don't think that percentage is great as far as seeing success levels. So
I think that the percentages are very low because, again, most of them are going for, 1 year. You know, you play up 4, and then you go for 1 year, and then you're in a whole new system. Unless you have that super talent, I don't think the success rate is really all that high. I truly don't. And the thing, again, with the NIL, but before I go there, what is your thought process? I think what they did was a good thing because, you know, if you went and for example, the combine and you had an agent, you were stuck.
Yeah.
You either made the NBA or you see you later. You better go play overseas. But now what they allow you to do, you can go to the combine, you can have an agent, and you can still decide to go back to college, which has its good points, has its bad points like anything else. But at least I think it enables the player to say, okay, how good am I really? Where do I go? And then what is my projected pick? Or where might I land? What am I being evaluated at? What is my status? And if it's not as to what they expect, they'll go back and do another year. You know what I mean? So it's a real tricky situation. I don't know, man. But you said that, like a lot of these coaches, you don't know what you're doing because now if you're a new coach, you come into a new environment, and then if they don't like, they're gone.
Yeah.
And then what do?
So to answer your question though, Michael, about it's created, I believe it's created flexibility for the player. That it's not that finality of I've chosen an agent, I'm stuck here. My ability to raise my game or to climb up that next step is really not there. So this is something that I brought up last night, where when we were talking about foreign players, underclassmen leaving. I don't know when this changes, but I do think it's on the horizon where the NCAA, at least on the basketball side, starts to get a little bit more diluted.
Exactly.
You know, and that's a bit scary, I think, for the NCAA. So I think they're trying to do some things for the players, for the students, to create some flexibility where that door is not completely closed when you make certain decisions. So I think, again, trying to make it more attractive for those kids, hopefully to stay in school, and hopefully they can start to get a little bit better, have a little bit more time to make a decision.
Yeah.
And again, you're maturing, right? You're a young guy. You're trying to figure out what you want to do with at least your immediate life. So I think that's the point of the NCAA creating that flexibility where it didn't exist a few years ago, where I think there was some really hard feelings. And I think the NCAA was stubborn because they think they're the only game in town. And that's not the case anymore. It really isn't.
And another thing that's popping up, I don't know if you've been on it like I have been. A lot of these coaches have been getting suspended.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these coaches have been getting suspended for various reasons, but I think it probably comes down to one reason: is some type of recruiting.
Yes.
Yeah. But I don't want to go into it right now, Mike. We can do that for another time. But I've just contacted him. I'm just waiting to see if he'll come on. He just was on. He was active 23 minutes ago. I'm hoping he comes on. It says apologies running late, 15 minutes late. So again, what I want to discuss with him, and now that we got you here, what is your take on, okay, let's say it's me. I get a coaching job right here in New Bedford. And I say, I got a coaching job right here in New Bedford. This is where I grew up, 15 minutes down the street. I think you know where I'm going with this. Mm-hmm. I grew up 15 minutes from here. I grew up on these streets when I didn't have anything, when I was on welfare, whatever. But I worked my way up and I became a decent high school player, college player. And then I decided I wanted to go into the world of coaching. And then to be able to get this opportunity to coach in the town or city that I grew up in and make pretty good money in a conference that's seen nationwide. And then I make a promise to the city of New Bedford that I am here for the duration. I am thankful to be able to be given this opportunity, and I want to stay here. And then, for some reason, this guy, Mike Samuel, who was coaching at Fairhaven High School, he decides to leave. And my reaction is, okay, well, shoot, I'm going to go to Fairhaven. I know you know I'm going with this. Mm-hmm. So basically, I'll keep it in a nutshell. I was really surprised and questioning why Ed Cooley left Providence the way he did. Is my man in the building? All right, we got my man in the building. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I got my man Gene Smith, former captain of Georgetown University. And my man, I was talking about the last time you had come on my show. We had a little bit of technical difficulties. My fault, of course. But how you doing, my brother?
I'm doing great. I want to apologize for being more than tardy. I had a meeting that went over, and then I'm out here in LA. So I jumped on the road thinking I could just call in with the phone. And was having technical difficulties again. That you just said, you're bad, so my bad. But it's like I said to my wife. I said to her, because I'm literally in the back, like she's an Uber, trying to get ready to jump on, and for whatever reason I couldn't access the app. But long story short, man, I'm happy to be here. I apologize. I really enjoyed our last conversation, so it looks like we're going to have to do it a third time.
That's not a problem. But something? I'm this guy. It wasn't my fault this time, because last time it was all on me.
Well, but the fact that it was all on you and I still enjoyed myself, I'll take that.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Prior to you coming on, I went through your whole, basically your bio, and then the last time we talked, I didn't know you do what you do. I had no idea. I never got to that. But I let the folks and people know what you do, and I had no inclination that's what you were doing. But what we wanted to do is, we still got some time. I wanted to because I already gave him all about your playing and all.
But can you introduce me to the other gentleman on the call?
Oh, yeah, wouldn't that make sense? Gene, this is my co-host, Mr. Mike Semio. He is
Hey, Gene.
I guess he's the more intellectual one. I'm more street. He's intellectual. We're like frickin' frat. But that's Mike Semio. Mike Semio, this is my man, Gene Smith.
It's nice to meet you, Mike.
You as well.
Yeah.
So, Gene, getting back to what I was saying is because I already gave a big introduction about everything that you've done already, about where you work now and all that stuff, and about a little bit of the career. We talked about the team that you were on when you were captain of. We named all the players. We went through quite a bit of things.
We're very thorough, Gene.
I had to do my homework. I knew he was coming on. I had to do my homework. What was it like playing that job? I want to talk about when you first got recruited, and then when you found out, look who was on your team, and then playing for that man, Mr. John Thompson. I think people would love to hear that.
So Mike, I always like to try to give it some context, right?
Okay.
And the context is obviously we're talking, 1980 in Washington, D.C. It's Chocolate City.
Yep.
Big John had only been there less than a decade. He'd been there 8 years. He got there in 72, 73. He had embarked upon an incredible run in 1980 with the Georgetown program where they got to the Elite Eight.
Okay.
He had already beaten Maryland a couple of times, which Maryland was the school in the DMV. So my point being, the program was ascending, right? It was particularly on a national level, but especially on a local level. So for someone like myself, who, again, context, was not heavily recruited, Coach Thompson's recruiting pitch, for lack of a better way of putting it, was, I'm bringing you to Georgetown to be a role player.
Okay.
To be a practice player. Excuse me. You're going to be a practice player. So my mentality going in was, man, we're just starting to hear about Georgetown. This is one of those things where, my mother was religious growing up. She didn't impose it upon us. I went and got saved when I found out about the Georgetown opportunity. I went to the church and got saved. That's how, I'm like, this was a Hail Mary. Like this, I don't know where this came from. I'm doing something right. So I'm going to Georgetown with that feeling of not so much inferiority from a heart level. Let's just say that. Talent, talent sometimes is in the eyes of the beholder.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, Coach Thompson saw something. So when I arrived on campus, Eric Floyd was the BMOC, the big man on campus. So this is 1980-81. Coming off the Elite Eight, we had a strong junior core, Eric Smith, Sleepy, I mentioned, Ed Spriggs, Mike Hancock. We were still a local team, even though Sleepy was from North Carolina.
Right.
There was, Jeff Bullis was on the team. Ron Blaylock. These are some people that didn't play, but we had a team. Big John put together a team that was as good off the court as it was on the court. So the personalities gelled, right? They meshed. Doesn't mean that we all liked each other. It just means when we got in between those lines, we pretty much took on the mentality of us against the world. And so, because that's pretty much Hoya paranoia was in full effect. That's how Big John established the program as a black man having a head coaching position at a prestigious university, not for athletics, but just a prestigious university.
Right.
He was under a microscope. So I say it all the time. We were the symbol of pride. We were symbol of we went to school, right? We graduated. He graduated his players. We wore coat and ties on the road, right? We did not do a lot of press. I mean, I can only imagine Big John in today's game. He made it difficult for the press to have access. Now, Conman has heard this. That didn't matter when it was Gene Smith they wanted to talk to. It only mattered when they wanted to talk to Patrick.
Right.
Because, Patrick had the same level, he gave the same level of access as he gave to everyone. Like, you're going to get 3 minutes. You're going to get 5 minutes. And on top of that, I'm not going to allow my freshman players to talk until the new year. So from November to December, no, you can't talk to my freshmen. Can you imagine that in today's world, Mike? What that would look like? I mean, he would be completely, ostracized by the press. So I say all this to say, me getting to Georgetown was unbelievable on so many levels. But from just the on-court level, we played extremely hard. Defense dictated our offense. And then you fast forward to the next year, 81-82. They kicked in the door in 80 by going to the Elite Eight. We had a subpar year in my freshman year. We lost in the first round. And just an addendum to my freshman year, the guy he told, you're going to be a practice player, I started the last 8 games of the season. Go figure. Like, so his program was not based on aesthetics, like style of play. His program was based on, we're going to win by any means necessary.
Okay.
And I don't say that just for a soundbite. Like, he literally felt all of the NCAA, the establishment, was against us. Where the PWI, which that acronym didn't even exist in the 80s. If it did, it wasn't. I didn't know about it. We're fielding predominantly an all-black team, and I'm a black head coach.
Right.
I mean, those aesthetics alone were not commonplace. So it was just an incredible time, an incredible run. I just read a stat today. That's why I love Twitter. Like the fluidity of things, of information coming to you, and sometimes it's useful. Most times it's not useful, but I came across something today that's useful based on what I'm discussing. From 1983 to 1986, which was 2 championship games for Georgetown, 1 chip, and then I think 2 Elite Eights, 3 final. Point being, it was a great run for Georgetown basketball-wise. Between 1983 and 1986, the enrollment at Georgetown increased by 45%.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, I guess I got 2 mics. To put that in perspective, gentlemen, in today's world, when you win a national championship, your enrollment increases by average 7.7%.
Wow.
So that's the impact that the basketball program was having on the university. So being there from 1980 to 84, I'm in there. Like, I'm part of that. To have experienced that, and to have known what it was to be respected, not only on the court, but off the court, to make the impressions on millions of people that were otherwise forced to root for North Carolina or Duke, or to be a part of that program is something that, I'm so proud of. Like, I'm so humbled in so many ways, which again has fostered in some things that I'm doing on my own. And when I say on my own, I've taken the initiative. I have a alumni-centric podcast called Hoya Locker Room. And it's a low-budget affair, but it packs a lot of content, and it's from the heart. And I'm coming up on my 3rd year in doing it. Well, I'm actually in my 3rd year of doing it. So yeah.
I did my little homework on that too, because I wanted to, me, I was going to discuss about But I want to do that. Hopefully, we can do it in the future. But you all had Mr. Ed Cooley on your broadcast. I'd like to go into that as well, but I want to finish up with you as far as your experiences. When you were, I guess, going for that chip.
Yeah,
you guys were going through those hardships,
well,
that struggle.
It's so emblematic of what team really means. And again, we're talking the 80s. So, with the transfer portal and the older players now, the dynamics are different. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. Coach, we had a gentleman on our team by the name of Ed Spriggs.
Yes.
He was by far the most physical player that I've ever played with. And he was 6'9", 240, chiseled. But he was 27 years old when I got there.
Wow.
That's like being in the portal now.
Yeah.
I mean, his he was. I think there are 4 brothers in the family. One of the brothers passed away maybe a decade ago. Rest in peace, Greg Spriggs. Greg Spriggs was not a basketball player. I think he might have been a football player in high school, but he was Sugar Ray Leonard's bodyguard. Oh. His other brother, Larry Spriggs, played in the NBA, was on the championship, was on one of the Lakers championship teams.
I remember. Mm-hmm.
And went to Howard. So Ed was working in the post office, but playing like in the summer leagues around DC, and Big John saw him. So Big John talks to him, coerced him into coming to Georgetown, and there wasn't anyone who came through the paint and he didn't touch up. and when I say touch up, fellas, I'm talking Roosevelt Bowie, all the way to James Worthy. James Worthy, him and Sleeper from Gastonia, North Carolina.
Right. Mm-hmm.
James Worthy asked Sleepy after the game, can I curse on this show?
Yeah, go ahead.
Who the fuck is number 50? Like, Ed Spriggs was drafted by the Boston Celtics in the 9th round in 1982. That's when they had, 10 rounds.
Everybody.
Yeah. You two guys got drafted. I got drafted in 1984. I got drafted. But it's one of those things where it was like he was so physical, and Big John saw that. But what Big John didn't factor in is he was so mature. Like Big John ways, which were foreign to a 19-year-old or a 17-year-old. To this guy, he got it because he's already experienced life. Because Big John was teaching life lessons. It wasn't, there was no NIL, obviously. Our meal money, I'm sure, was less than every other major college program in the country. And I only know this because I was so humbled to be invited to an Olympic tryout at Georgetown in my senior year, the year we won the chip. And, I get there and I'm making friends with guys that I normally, I wouldn't be around. Like I'm a role player. I'm at an Olympic tryout the year that the 1984 Olympic team. So I don't have to rattle off the names that were there.
No, you don't.
Okay.
We know who's in that draft, though.
We know who was in that draft. So just imagine, Mike, I'm there, right? I'm there with the jersey. But that only happened because obviously the success of the program and success of the team. But I bring that up because I'm having conversations with other guys there, and they're telling me what their per diem was, and they're telling me what benefits they receive on campus. And I'm thinking to myself, that's not happening where I'm from.
Right.
And again, the guy who it would have happened to would have been Patrick, and Patrick was my roommate for 2 years. He wasn't getting shit. He was borrowing from me. So just an incredible time. I had started off by saying how emblematic of the 84 team the word team was, because Michael Graham, a pivotal player of our NCAA Final Four run. Guys, you know how many minutes he averaged the game during the season?
Oh,
12,
back.
12 minutes. Was not part of the regular season. But come the Final Four, somebody else took over. Like,
Are you there, Mike?
I am.
oh, he's just listening. He can't get a word in.
I'm listening.
So it's just one of those things where we were 12 men deep. I think we just lost the big man.
Yeah, he'll be back.
But we were 12 men deep. Like every man on that team mattered. And to take it even further, I say this for context. I averaged the 4th or 5th most minutes on that team, 1984. I didn't play in the championship game because I was hurt. Reggie Williams, a freshman, gets player of the year. He gets my minutes. So we embodied, like we were good 1 through 12. And we all assumed a role and we played it. You might not have liked your role, but you played it to the fullest.
Mm.
And, you know, again, I'm sure each championship team has their own story. We had a lot of challenging scenarios during that year. We had 2 players on the team, their mothers passed away that year. You know, and again, you know, that's not something that comes out unless you do a story on it, right? An in-depth story.
Right.
But that team was so special. But the program is a special program, which is why, you know, I feel a podcast that I'm doing from a former player is noteworthy. Because if you look across the country, there are former players doing podcasts, but it's not about their alma mater. Right. And mine solely is about recognizing those guys that have come through the program, worn the blue and gray. And we have a common thread. Con Man mentioned I've had Ed Cooley on the show, and that has meant so much to our platform because that means he gets what we're talking about. Like, this is about nothing other than, I have a Frederick Douglass quote, which is, we only want to do with the past as it relates to the future, right? We're not talking about the past just to, you know, relive our glory days.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the past because that matters as we move through this. And to see the level of interest, because Ed Cooley's hit the ground running. He has an incredible recruiting class coming in now, and he has an incredible recruiting class coming in the future. And he's done it without a blip. Like, it's like he's been at Georgetown for a year already. So, and that speaks to a brand that has been challenged over the last 6 years.
Sure.
So, you know, it's exciting times on the hilltop. The 84 team, I think, is symbolic of what the program represents, which is we're a national championship program. We went to a Final Four in 82, a Final Four in 84, a Final Four in 85. You and I both know if we win 2 of those instead of 1, it's a different storyline for the program.
Sure.
If we win back-to-back in 84, 85, it's a different storyline to the program. You know, not to mention how many numerous elite 8s and Sweet 16s, incredible tournament run, but the last 6 years have been difficult. And I think, you know, Cooley corrected me on the program. I called it I can't remember the exact phrase, but he referred to it as reestablishing. Oh, I said rebuild. I said we're rebuilding the brand. He says no, we're reestablishing the brand, and that makes more sense.
Sure, it does.
Yeah.
Can I follow up real quick?
Sure.
So when you're talking about not winning back-to-backs, not winning that back-to-back was a great effort by another team, right? So if that team plays a little bit less than what they did It's an entirely different change in that game. I mean, so that's interesting.
Well, I will only add to that because I'm really good friends with Chuck Everson.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a senior on that team. No, he wasn't a senior. He was a junior on that team. And there was an infamous incident that occurred right before halftime between him and Reggie Williams. And him and Reggie Williams almost came to blows. Well, let's call it what it was. Chuck was taking blows from Reggie. I love you, Chuck, but Reggie was throwing, you weren't. But it's one of those deals where we did everything we could to fuel that fire. So they went into the locker room even more fired up. But you're right, Mike. They played the perfect game, damn near. They damn near played a perfect game.
Yeah, and that's tough when you're on the other side of it because you're waiting for a little bit of a wrinkle where you can kind of sneak in and kind of impose yourself, and that just didn't happen the entire game.
No, Mike, we had the wrinkle. It happened. That's why I bring up that incident. If you recall, right before halftime, and you don't recall, obviously I do because I was at the game. There was we went into four corners right before halftime. We had just gotten the lead by 1 point. So that momentum going into the locker room was similar to the momentum we had in 1984 when we were playing Kentucky. We went into the locker room down, but we went into the locker room in 1984 after a Michael Graham dunk.
Yeah.
So we were down all of the first half. The Villanova game, they're shooting the lights out. They're 10 for 10. Harold Jensen is lighting it up. We somehow or another seize the lead, I think, off of a Ewing dunk, and then we pull them out into four corners. We're up by 1. We're trying to go up by 3. We lose the ball. They come down, hit a jump shot, go up by 1 into the locker room. Then Reggie and Chuck get into it, and they go into the locker room all more fired up. So it was so slight, but it mattered. And unless you were there, you're thinking, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. It matters.
Well, those are those small margins, right? When you're in those kind of games and that kind of competition, those margins are very, very small.
Yes. So it was extremely small. But again, I love our program. I'm proud of our program. The last 6 years, it's almost like if any program can reestablish itself from that, it's Georgetown. Again, you heard I didn't say rebuild. I said reestablish. Because that's the verbiage. And I was corrected from the head man. Although we know you're the head man, Con Man. But I was corrected from the head man.
Well, sorry for the interruption, but now that the Con Man's back, what I wanted to discuss with you, number one, how did you feel about? I call him P. Keaton, but you guys call him. I refer to him as Pat Ewing, but him getting fired. What? Because I haven't spoke to you. Last time I spoke to you, he was still coaching at Georgetown.
Yeah.
How did you feel about him getting fired? Did you think it was justifiable? And then were you happy with who they ended up choosing?
Yeah.
For head coach.
Yeah, I would have been happy with anyone they chose, just because you gotta figure in they're going to bring somebody in there high caliber, right? They're not going to. It's not going to be a downgrade,
right?
As it relates to Patrick being fired, that's the nature of that beast, and I love Patrick Ewing as a person, love him as a player. The coaching thing, was challenging to say the least.
Okay.
It took me year 6 before I could say the words like, "Fam, you got to go." As I hope, he would say to me,
right?
Because again, it's not like he wasn't trying. It's just it was not working. And he loves the brand as much as I do.
Right.
And he only wants to see the brand reestablished. So if the sacrifice is him not being the head man, I would hope and pray that, after initially being, because you're only human. Nobody likes to get fired. I don't care.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I don't care if you don't like the job. You still don't want to be fired. But I think after he gets over because he's hard on himself, always has been. Like he expects nothing but the best. But if that wasn't working, I can only imagine after a period of time he would be okay with it. He could reconcile. But in terms of Cooley, it wasn't so much that I liked it. I respected it. I knew he was in the mix prior to Patrick coming. I did not know his affinity for the program. I did not know his connection to the program. Although as a black coach of any age, significant age, you know who John Thompson Jr. is.
Yes.
Big John had an impact on you. So with that being said, him coming on Hoya locker room was huge to me.
Right.
Yeah, we're 90. When he came on, we're 93 episodes. Sunday will be 93 episodes.
Wow.
That's regardless of the quality of our program, that's no kick in the bucket.
Not at all. Not at all.
And I've had Reggie on, Sleep on, Dikembe on. So the fact that he acknowledged that from the onset, like I said to my co-host is a former manager, Mike. And I'm not talking to you, Carman, when I say Mike, because I'm still formal with him, not you. My co-host is three. He was a manager at Georgetown, a student manager. He was manager of the year 3 years in a row, from 87 to 91. So he was there during the glory days, Final Eights, Sweet 16, Big East championships. He reached out to Cooley. I didn't. I would have respectfully waited until the season has started, just because I can only imagine how busy this guy is.
Mm.
You know what I mean? You can't take for granted somebody else's time. That's why, again, I apologize for being late.
No, go ahead. No problem.
But having Cooley on board, the first thing he did at his initial press conference, Mike, was he brought up all the former players in the audience to the platform. I mean, that's intentional. Right?
Yeah, who does that?
Yeah, in this day and age, right? So he was paying homage, but he made it clear, this is my program. He made it clear we move forward from this point on. If Con Man really did his homework, he would have watched the Cooley episodes, and he would have remembered me telling a story. There was a former player at an open practice they were having with the current team, and the former player got so excited, he ran onto the court, Mike. Cooley said, with a kind of a smirk, "Hey, man, get the fuck off my court." So he's embracing the past, but hold up now, this is my show. So, when I hear things like that, I have a rapport. I have Cooley's phone number. I can text him. He responds. But again, I'm not looking for a relationship, so to speak, with Coach. I want Coach to win.
Exactly.
That's the only thing I care about. So whether or not him and I are buddy, don't get me wrong. I've already sent him a player that he might want to take a look at. Because again, as former players, man, this, we get hit up with kids that can play all day, every day.
Oh, right.
So my phone doesn't stop ringing. It may not ring every day, all day, as I mentioned, but I get a call every now and then. Yo, Gene, my son can really go.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Again, I do the eye test. I do is he a Georgetown man, so to speak? Because I'm not putting my name on anything. But a 5-star is a 5-star. A 4-star is a 4-star. If I'm sending you a 4-star, 5-star, you're not taking a look. I'm not sending you, and if I send you a sleeper that nobody knows about, then you definitely better take a look because everybody knows everybody now.
True.
You know what I mean? If you can play, a kid is putting this shit on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right.
It's on YouTube, it's on Instagram, it's on Twitter, it's on Facebook, it's everywhere. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm dating myself. It's on Instagram.
Yeah.
Cooley gets the serious stamp of approval. And this is from some of the more discerning alumni in terms of basketball players. And because we have such a unique program, you know, it isn't all peaches and cream, right? Like everybody who was there didn't have a Gene Smith experience. You know, there were people who came to Georgetown 10 times more talented and then couldn't get off the bench. And there are reasons for that. And I explore some of that on Hoya Locker Room because I don't think that's a detriment to the program. I think that's a learning tool for a kid who's going to school. Look, it doesn't always work out. What's your plan if it doesn't work out? And for a kid today, you don't have to tell them that because they got the transfer portal.
True. That's
true.
Know,
but in the 80s and the 90s, you didn't have a transfer portal.
Mm-mm.
You had to ride that bitch out. Or you were good enough for somebody else to take a chance on you, but then you had to sit out the year.
Right.
You know, so it wasn't as seamless as it is now. So, you know, I really like I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about my show because I'm not very good at talking about it. But yeah, it's been cool. What I also find interesting is that you guys are New England guys and Cooley's a New England guy.
I was gonna bring that up.
I pay attention. So listen, man, I can only imagine what it was for this cat, for Cooley to leave that fan base, that support he had to come to DC. I could. So,
and Gene, I mean interrupt you, but we were talking about that before you came on. I was just asking for someone who grew up in Providence. Matter of fact, the stadium, whatever you want to call it, was 15 minutes from where he grew up. Ed grew up poor. He had a great high school career. Played at a small college, Stonehill. I know him from the get-go. And when they went at BC and Fairfield and all that. And then when he got the opportunity to coach, where he lived 15 minutes away, and he grew up poor, he struggled throughout his whole life, and to come back, and when he got that opportunity, and like you said, for him to give that up to go to Georgetown, that must speak very highly of Georgetown. Well, now, I know his daughter goes to Georgetown. Yes. I know that. Yes. But I still think that, and that might have played a role. I don't know. But I mean, for him to leave.
It has played a role. Yeah. I mean, I would only interrupt to say, not only did he go to Providence 15 minutes away from his school, if you look at his journey up until Providence, very substantial, still in the New England area, but he went to Providence and killed it, yo.
I know. Hey, you know who my best friend is, Dave Lato. You know how that goes. Connecticut, Providence, and then went to the. So I know all about that.
He went to Providence and turned. I remember playing Providence when I was in the 80s. Otis Thorpe. Before that, it was Ricky Tucker. My best friend who transferred from Georgetown to Providence, Ray Knight, Harold Starks, Keith Lomax. You had great players.
But did you play against Donnie Brown?
What's that?
Donnie Brown?
Donnie Brown. Yeah. I mean, you had good teams, good players, good coaches, but Ed put the cherry on the top. So to leave that to come to the Georgetown program, and again, we recognize the program for the opportunity and what it represents, but it couldn't have been easy. And the Providence fan base reacted accordingly, yo.
Yeah, they still are. It's still reverberating through that whole region at this point, because part of one of the struggles with Providence colleges is really trying to find its true identity, right? So you go back to the 60s and the 70s with Dave Gavitt and Marvin Barnes and DiGregorio and those guys, and the teams afterwards with Bruce Campbell and Otis Thorpe, as you mentioned. That particular school has had a hard time trying to find identity. They thought they had it with that coach, right? They thought that was going to be.
We can't help but mention Billy Donovan and Rick Pitino. That team.
Yes.
That team that beat Georgetown to go to the Elite Eight to go to the Final Four.
Final Four, yeah, yes.
Yeah, that was 8. Was that 80? What was that? Reggie, was that 80?
I want to say 88.
87, 88, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So again, Providence has a rich basketball history, but I feel like Cooley took it to another level.
Yeah.
And I know that's an overused term, another level, but I just think he made such an impact. He was Naismith Coach of the Year, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that goes without saying. But yeah, he could not be a better fit.
That's good.
And
That's good.
Wins and losses tell the whole story, unfortunately, in today's world. But just based on his efforts to date. And again, outside of the fact that he's been responsive to our platform and the former players, I'm just talking about from the alumni clubs, the cheerleaders, the athletic department, other sports, embracing the DMV, which again, we're going to continue to hopefully assist and or prod him to own. But I don't think he would be at the level he's at if he wasn't already recruiting in the DMV.
Now, let me ask you another question, Gene.
Yep.
Has anyone left Providence to go play for him at Georgetown?
No, they have not. I think of all the top remaining players that were available to leave, stayed. So again, I think that speaks to what he built.
Yeah.
And also the new head coach is no slouch, Kim English.
No. I know about him.
Another DMV guy. So, so again, I think Providence. If I was a Providence fan, there's no way I wouldn't be disappointed. But I would look at the fact that your top guys are staying, and the incoming head coach is a dandy. Is a good one.
Yeah.
So I probably would focus my energy on that. And let me just say, if they had kept Patrick another year, it would have been brutal, right? It would have been difficult because I know Patrick's legacy deserves better than that. And let's be honest, guys.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like he walked away with nothing. Like they took care of him.
Mm-hmm.
They took care of him. And, if you look at the numbers, the longer he stayed, the more that buyout number would have decreased. So, I hate to get into dollars and cents, but sometimes dollars do make sense.
Absolutely. 100%.
So 100%. When he left, he walked away with a nice package, and I'm happy for him and his family. But I'm not suggesting on any level he was happy with his reign at Georgetown. I mean, even with that reign he had, reign of terror, the opposite kind of terror, reign of horror, he won a Big East championship.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true.
So that only Big East player ever to win a championship as a player and a coach.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so that's I'm the research guy on my show. But this is the thing. I'm the research guy, and you think the manager would be the research guy. I'm the guy, and he's the smart one.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Sergio Macho, he's a smart one.
The research guy's not the smart guy. He's a puppet. He can parrot. He can parrot.
There you go.
I mean, we end every show with a quote, and he drops a quote that sums up the episode. Man, it's been so much fun. Being able to give back. Like I have made it a point to embrace the university and all of their social media or communication efforts. I challenge them to do the same. I've had the athletic director on the show. I've invited the president of the university on the show.
Wow.
And they've had me on a university episode where, again, I get to talk about the show. But, where I need help at is promoting the product, which humbly, there's a part of me that goes, I shouldn't have to, right? If our core fan base invests, I'm good. So I'm going to keep going. Episode 100 that I'm approaching, it'll be a watermark moment for me. Like I'll reflect. I can reflect. But ideally, I would love for someone younger, a younger alumni, that was more digitally savvy,
Right.
To be involved, and maybe I can just come on every 20 episodes or something.
Well, Gene, since you brought that up, we have a lot of people that watch from the New England area as well, and I'm sure they have Ed Cooley has a fan base out here. So
Yep.
For those who might want to tune into your show, what do they got to do? How do they get the opportunity to watch what you're doing? And
yeah, and it's real easy. And my co-host now makes me do this every episode now. He makes me give out that information, and it's painful because you can tell I almost cover my mouth when I say it. But it's real easy. You can follow us on Instagram at Hoya.locker.room, or just put in Hoya Locker Room will come up. You can follow us on Twitter. We're at Room Hoya, ROOM Hoya, HOYA on Twitter. We have a YouTube channel, which is Hoya Locker Room. We stream live every 2 Sundays, so twice a week. We stream live on Facebook. We also have a Facebook page, Hoya Locker Room. I'm proud to say, man, like we're almost at 1,000 followers across the board in every platform.
Right, exactly.
And for me, that's perfect. But by the same token, I'd like to do merchandise. I'd like to be able to give back financially to the program. I'd like to provide NIL opportunities for the players. These are all things our platform can generate. So I like to monetize it, is what I'm saying. And with my background, I should be able to very easily do that. But because I'm so close, it's almost more difficult. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does. I think you're right, though. I think the opportunity to actually kind of give back is a great motivator. And actually continue to promote that program, I think, is pretty cool. One of the things I've teased Michael about is, so when are we getting sponsors on here, Michael? When are we going to be able to do some things? And that just goes back to, I think, what you're pointing out is just having more people involved and more people following. Yeah. So there's a lot of competition, right? There's a lot of media out there already right now, really trying to make sure that everyone's watching something. And so a lot of challenges on this platform because it's very competitive.
Think about it. If I listen to you two guys, again, this is my second time on, because I listened to Con Man's episode with Mike Jarvis. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this guy cares. This guy knows people. This guy is invested, right? So it was a no-brainer for me to want to come on. So it was unique in that way. So when you're 100% right, there's a plethora of things to listen to. Since I started doing Hoya Locker Room, I listened to less. but also I don't listen to Hoyer Locker Room. Once I do an episode, I'm done with it. You know, and I only bring that up because I think what we're doing, even though it's not the best thing in the world, but you show me where former players are talking about the program, representing the program in a public space. Again, they may be out there talking about themselves.
Can't beat that, man. Definitely can't beat that.
Yeah, mentioning their I'm only talking about.
Well, you know, my man Gene, it's been an honor and a pleasure having you come on.
Yeah.
I think Michael's frozen again.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I'm so.
Begins again. We got to do this again.
Yes.
And again, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are one special individual, and I'm gonna be tuning in to your podcast as much as I definitely can. And again, I want to thank you, Mike. Do you have any other last things to say?
No, I think this is a great episode. I look forward to having Gene back on just to hear the conversations and actually expand upon the conversations of what we're talking about tonight. So, Gene, it was great meeting you.
Mike, it was great meeting you. Please, let's do this again.
We will.
When we have more time.
Yes.
And I promise you I won't wear this hat next time.
All right, I'll hold you to that, all right? Thanks, Gene.
Hey, listen, can you make sure I get a copy of this episode?
I will do that, sure.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.